The other thing is just measuring your success. So PR and marketing in a company can often be pretty fuzzy, and a lot of times people don't want to devote money to it because they say, well, I want to see the results, and it's often hard to measure the impact of PR and marketing. So one thing is, prior to launch, make sure you get internal agreement among your team. Even if there's only 5 people on your team, how are you going to define success in terms of PR and marketing? And then it's about quantity as well as quality. So a lot of the PR firms will come in and show you these lists and say, okay, last year we got you 30 hits. Isn't that great? Well, 2 things. One, what tier publications were they in? So I would always tier the publications, right? There's tier 1 that you're excited if you get 1 hit a year. That's New York Times, Wall Street Journal, right? Tier 2 will be some of the publications more of like maybe Boston Globe. Actually, Boston Globe might be tier 1, but less important. Then tier 3 are really smaller trade publications. But you want to make sure you get in each of those tiers, and then it's also the quality. So a lot of times a PR firm will come back and say, well, we got you 30 hits, and you look at the hits, and it's your name just listed with 5 other companies. Like, oh, these 5 companies launched new products. That's not a hit to me. A hit is my own story talking about my product and why my product is better. So then thinking about who you want to target, right? So what publications? And so as I mentioned before, for example, with Hippocrates, we were very focused on the physician market. And even if you have a consumer product in healthcare, you might want to pull the physician in, because a lot of times consumers, you want the physician recommending to the patient, hey, have you seen this asthma product or diabetes product? And have that pull through. So you obviously want to go to some of the bigger publications, but there's healthcare specific blogs. You want the technology publications, the different physician academies, even pharmaceutical executive. If part of your business plan is to get money from pharma, you want to start getting in those pharmaceutical journals, because they're thinking a year ahead about where their budget is going for money. So you need to start seeding the market there. And then a lot of people ask, well, when should I start targeting, right? Do I start before the product launches? It depends on your product and what your goal is. So sometimes we kind of have a building buzz strategy. So for example, our product we just launched, we started 6 months before and just seeding the market. But part of that was because there were already several competitors in the market. And so we weren't going to be new to the market. So in a way, we kind of had to do catch up. What we typically did was more show success. We rarely did press releases right when the product launched. We actually typically waited for about a month. 1, to kind of create buzz, but 2, so we had data and usage, so we could go back and say in the first month we got 15,000 users to use our product, and we had users lined up to talk to the press and everything. And at least for Hippocrates, that tended to be a better strategy. All right, so you're ready to go. You're ready to talk to the bloggers, the reporters, the industry analysts. What do you do? So first, did you pass the so what test? Make them feel special. So they're people just like you, right? Do your homework on them. I would always read up, what was the last article they wrote? I complimented. I say, oh, such great insights in that last article you had about so-and-so and so. That makes them feel happy, right? Don't mention other publications. Sometimes it works, actually. I will say that in terms of playing them off one another if you want to get an exclusive. But what I would find a lot of times would happen, say, oh, so-and-so wrote about us last month, thinking, oh, well, that would get them to want to write about us. And then, oh, well, so-and-so wrote about you then. I'm not going to write about you. So you have to use that one pretty carefully, how you play each other off. Customizing the message, I can't say how important that is. Most people, create their message and then go out and pitch 20 people. You actually need to spend time to customize it by the reporter and the publication, and take the extra time that you need for that. And visual support, so always send screenshots of the product. The other thing I wanted to mention that I think is an interesting thing to think about is when we would pitch reporters, most of the time the features in our product that were the most popular by the users were not the most interesting to the media or to the blogger. So for example, use example, pill pictures. We launched it, we thought it was cool. Doctors rarely use this feature at all, even though we spent a lot of time building it. But the media loved it, right? It was visual, it seemed cool, the idea that you could find a pill on the floor and pick it up and type in the number and it would tell you what it is. They jumped on that. And so eventually we didn't want them to write about the pill picture feature because it wasn't being used that much, but that was the hook to get in. So that's one thing to think about when you're talking about 2 reporters, is that the thing that your users like the most might not be the thing that you pitch to reporters. The other thing to talk about is, think about it from the reporter's point of view. So we had a feature called the formulary lookup. So doctors used this and they liked it, but it wasn't one of the top features. What it let you do is go in and say, if I'm on Aetna Health Plan, which drugs are covered or not covered by my health plan. And when you talk to the reporter, you know almost everybody has had the situation where you go to a pharmacy and you're picking up your medication and it's more expensive than you thought it was going to be, or it's not covered and they have to call the pharmacy. So you just talk to the reporter like that. It's conversational versus message points. You say, hey, have you ever been to the pharmacy and you had this happen to you? And 9 times out of 10, oh yeah. So think of things like that and how you can have a conversation with the reporter that you're pretty sure they've been in that situation. Couple other things. Okay, what if they're not interested in my story? Actually, this is one of the great learning points you can have. Find out why. You know, it might have just been time. It might have been that they covered that topic. But what we would do is say, try to figure out what they are interested in. And what we would do then is say, hey, you know what, next month we're going to do a survey with our users. You know, are there any questions you would want to ask and get stories in their cities? And so, like I mean, the Associated Press stories tend to have very long.
How did you reach AP like that?
The Associated Press reporter?
Yeah.
So, well, we were in Louisville and we just started this program with the medical school.
Okay.
And so we went out to the reporter and we said, we think it's really interesting that, do you know the Louisville Medical School is now giving iPhones to every incoming medical student, and they're putting Hippocrates on those iPhones, and it's going to be a different generation of doctors. So we pitched that story to Louisville, and a lot of times if you pitch to a smaller market, they often have less people coming to them.
Okay.
You know, for example, if you're pitching at Chicago Tribune, right, or some of the big markets. And so sometimes that's a good strategy to go to the smaller markets, and then it gets picked up. Okay, so social media, I haven't talked a lot about that because I wanted to get kind of more like the PR 101. But to me, if possible, keep it in-house. I've seen a lot of companies outsource their social media to PR firms or consultants. And to me, social media is about you telling your story to your users and having a personality and having it be conversational. And that's really hard to do for somebody who's not within your company and around your product and your users day in and day out. Have a point of view. I've also seen a lot of companies or the CEOs are afraid to take a stand or be provocative and have a point of view when reporters are asking them questions. You need to have a point of view and take a stand and become kind of an information source. And you know, it might turn out later you shouldn't have taken that stand, but you're going to get more coverage and more interest if you have a strong point of view one way or another. I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of these channels because, you know, obviously, it depends what your product is. So our product was for physicians and healthcare professionals. And while we could jump on the social media bandwagon, if you look at who's actually using Facebook, so for example, about 30% of doctors are actually using Facebook. When we asked them, do they ever use it for professional purposes or kind of share information about products and services, very few said they did. So we didn't really focus on Facebook too much energy in terms of getting doctors. We had other strategies for that, but a lot of nurses and other healthcare professionals, for example, were on Facebook. So we actually kind of tweaked our content and what we put on Facebook, not for our core audience, which was the doctors, but for some of the other healthcare professionals. Twitter is interesting. Now, we didn't have a ton of news at Hippocrates. I mean, we launched a new product every 6 months, which drove me nuts because I wanted to get more products out the door. But our users were really not on Twitter. Twitter was really for the media and the reporters. So we flooded our Twitter channel with stats, survey results, and data because that's what a lot of times reporters are looking for is data and stats. Okay, and then just last I hear, what tools do you need? If you don't have a lot of money, go as cheap as you can. In terms of tracking what we use Google Alerts, Social Mentions, and Addictomatic. For newswire distribution, if you know there are very expensive newswires to put your press release out, you don't need those expensive newswire services. PR Web is about $130 per press release. That's really all you need. Or if you go global newswire, just do the California distribution. Don't do national distribution. Everything in California distribution gets picked up nationally. Okay, so just a few lessons I had learned over the years at Hippocrates. We talked about this. If you can't answer the so what question, you need to go back to the drawing board and figure out what is the so what about your pitch. Do not do the same story and pitch for everyone if you can help it, or at least figure out these are the 10 most important people. I need to customize it for those people. If you're always trying for the home run, you might get the home run, but then there's going to be large chunks of time where you're not getting much press. So going to smaller publications, the influential bloggers, the industry analysts, focus there. There is such a thing as too much news, and so we actually purposely would not do more than one press release a month. Because if you have too much news, it's like the boy who cries wolf, right? I mean, you want to save your news and have fewer news pitches, but that have a bigger punch. Content is king. The more content, you're a blog, or your own company blog, just developing your point of view on the industry. That's something reporters are looking for. Don't talk about or bash your competition. A lot of times reporters will try to get you to do that. Well, who's your competition? What's good about your competition? What's bad? I try to stay away from that because one, I don't want them writing about my competition in the story because that just gets press for my competition. And it also just doesn't make you look very good. So, I'll kind of mention the companies, but then I say, well, here's how we're different and we don't actually, we view ourselves in our own league. Silence can be hard. This is the other key thing I learned early on. Reporters will always try to get information on finances from you, right? How much money you raise, how many users you do, things you don't want to share with reporters. And they'll do the trick, you'll talk on the phone and then they'll just be silent. And they're waiting for you to fill the silence because they know most people will fill the silence. And just don't fill it, sit there. And then move on to the next question. I definitely got burned a couple of times there giving financial information. I got off the phone. I'm like, I can't believe I just told them that. Why did I do that? And it was because I couldn't stand the silence. So, final thoughts. We talked about this before. The other thing I'll mention is just continually evaluate your strategy. So whether you have a PR firm or you're doing it in-house, every 6 months, are your messages working? What success have you had? And grade yourself or your firm. Every 6 months, I had my PR firm give themselves a grade. They usually came back with a B plus or an A minus, and I usually said, no, actually you're a B minus or a C plus this month. But I also had my team grade ourselves. How did we do this 6 months, right? And then what would we do better? The other thing I would also do is before we kind of launched a kind of PR campaign or a marketing campaign, I would do a post-mortem. So I would assume, I said, let's assume the campaign's already done and we failed. Why did we fail? We kind of write on the board all of the reasons that we failed. And so what that forces you to do is think ahead of time about what do I need to do to make sure that we don't fail. And it's kind of an interesting exercise to go through with the team. And then just the last thing, don't launch on a Monday. That's probably self-evident, but nobody wants to hear your story on a Monday. Everybody's flooded. It's just like you come in the office Monday, you get a bunch of emails. And so Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, that's when you go with your big news. So, sorry, that was a lot of information. Hopefully that was helpful.